Hey guys, Hamsterwheel here with a new video, and today I'm bringing you a guide on what to do once you hit max level in the Burning Crusade. I got inspired to do one when I saw a comment made by Havoc on my Gearing for Dungeoneering video, and other people seem to like that idea as well. And well, you ask, I deliver. So without further ado, let's delve right into what to do at max level in the Burning Crusade. So I'm going to divide this video into two segments, one for PvP and one for PvE. Starting off with PvP. Now of course the obvious thing to do is to start doing battlegrounds, accept the PvP quest for marks of honor and victories in a certain BG, and start doing arena battles. I mean, stuff like that is obvious and I'm not going to talk about that too much. And while PvP seems rather linear, there are a few tips to keep in mind. So first thing I'd like to say is that this will be the first time in the new timeline regarding Classic that you will be able to buy gear with arena points. Now these arena points are given to you every week at a certain time, and how many you get depends on your rating. Now let's say you're still pretty bad at PvP, it's kind of new to you and you're still learning, but you still want to gear up and get those epic PvP pieces. I mean, I definitely can't blame you because they're super powerful, but in the worst case scenario, you'll make a team with 1, 2 or 4 other people and you just keep losing over and over again, leaving you with less points to gather each and every single week. So what I advise you to do as a novice to PvP is make a new team every week, because every team starts out with an arena rating of 1500. So what you could do is make a new team, lose 10 games in the worst case scenario, wait for you to get your weekly points, delete the team and then start all over again. That way, even if you lose every single match, you still get a half decent amount of points every week and you'll eventually be able to buy some PvP pieces besides the stuff you acquire through honor points. Of course, buying a new team every week will cost you 80 gold for a 2v2 team for instance. But if you split the difference between you and the other guy, that means it only costs you 40 gold every week, which is not too expensive. Now keep in mind that certain items will be locked behind a certain rating, but the gloves do not require any, so a great way to get started with PvP is to farm honor points out of battlegrounds for your regular PvP gear and use the tip I talked about to rack up arena points and have the gloves be your first purchase with arena points. And when you finally get the hang of your class alongside having a decent amount of PvP gear with resilience, you can start getting the required rating and then move on to purchasing the rest of the items through arena points. Another tip I will give you is that at a certain point in the Burning Crusade, a blue PvP armor set that is on par with the blue High Warlord set will come out. And this was to basically allow people who haven't touched PvP to kind of catch up to people who've been PvPing for quite a while. There are 5 factions that all offer one armor item, so in total it is a 5 set armor piece, just like your regular PvP set, and you need to be honored with those factions to be able to purchase the items. Now again, I'm pretty sure that this will come out later and isn't available right from the get-go. If my memory doesn't fail me, it was during the time Season 2 came out, but I really couldn't find anything on the internet, so I can't guarantee anything. So in this regard, I advise you to check out the Quartermasters of the factions you see on the screen right now and see if you can buy the blue PvP armor items. If you can, you might just be able to buy yourself some pretty decent PvP items with a single click of a button. Alright, and that pretty much covers PvP, because at that point it's all super simple. Just keep doing battlegrounds, get a higher rating for your team so you can get more arena pieces and so on. Time to move on to PvE, which really is going to be quite comprehensive, so let's get started. So first off, there's 4 main things you gotta focus on: flying mount, gear, attunement, and reputation. And if you're keen on getting into raids, your main goal is to get a gear level that is pre-raid best in slot or at least somewhat close. So how do we do that when we've only dinged level 70 recently and our gear is still somewhat questionable? Well, it's kind of a long journey and there's a lot to go through, but I'll try to do my best to let you know what to do step by step. Alright, so in order to get that pre-raid best in slot level, or at least get somewhat close to that, the first option we have is to do heroic dungeons. Unfortunately, you can't do them quite yet when you just dinged level 70. You see, all the heroic dungeons in the Burning Crusade require a certain key. What key you need depends on what faction is linked to that dungeon. which also means that you can get these keys at the quartermaster of a certain faction. Now fortunately, you only need to be honored with each faction to get these keys, so no super long rep grinds required. And there are factions that you will probably be honored with even before you get to level 70, but let's go through them. Now in Hellfire Peninsula you have 3 dungeons: Hellfire Ramparts, the Blood Furnace, and Shattered Halls. In order to get access to the heroic version of these, you need to be honored with either Thrallmar or Honor Old, depending on your faction. Zangarmarsh also has 3 dungeons: the Slave Pens, the Steam Vaults, and the Underbog. To get the heroic version of these, you need to be honored with the Cenarian Expedition. Now Auchedon or Auchendon has 4 instances. I still can't pronounce that, I'm sorry boys. Sethek Halls, Auchenai or Auchenai Crypts, the Mana Tombs, and Shadow Labs. And here's something to keep in mind. Not all these dungeons give reputation for the same faction. Sethek Halls and Shadow Labs give reputation to the Lower City, Auchenai Crypts gives a combination of both Lower City and Shatar, and the Mana Tombs gives you a combination of the Consortium and a bit of Lower City. Despite that, all these instances require the Lower City key to get access to, so keep that in mind. Then we have the Tempest Keep instances, which sounds a little weird, because Tempest Keep is mostly referred to as the Tier 5 raid, but what I mean are the 3 separate dungeons that are close to this raid: the Mechanar, Arcatraz, and the Botanica, and those require you to get honored with the Shatar. Also, as you can see, these instances float in the air, so you will need a flying mount for this, which is why I mentioned the flying mount earlier on. Or have a warlock and 2 friends summon you over, but realistically it's just better to get it out of the way, spend a pretty penny, and get your flying mount yourself. And then last but not least, we have the instances at the Caverns of Time, which are Old Hillsbrad Foothills and the Black Morass. These require you to get honored with the Keepers of Time. Okay, so that's all fine and dandy, Hamster, but how exactly do we get honored with these factions? Well, there's 2 ways. First, there's quests, and factions like Thrallmar / Honorhold and Cenarian Expedition aren't too hard to get honored with, so that's not going to be an issue. However, the other ones are a little trickier, and there is just not a ton of quests out there that give you a lot of reputation with these factions. However, every single dungeon, regardless of whether you're doing it in normal or heroic mode, rewards you reputation with a certain faction. Here's a modified version of the list we previously checked out, but this time with the linked faction for each dungeon. So let's say for instance that you need to get honored with the Shatar. You can see that you can run the Mechanar, Arcatraz, and the Botanica to gain that extra reputation. I'll leave this on the screen just a little longer, and if you want to look at it even longer, you can always pause this. So let's recap real quick what we have so far. First, you need to get reputation with multiple factions to unlock heroic mode for the dungeons. You unlock heroic mode by getting honored, and you get this reputation by either doing quests or normal dungeons linked to that certain faction. Okay, Hamster, that's nice and all, but you just linked a whole bunch of dungeons. Which one should I do first? Well, here's the thing, that all depends on your gear level. So right now, go ahead and take a look at your gear. Let's say you haven't been lucky with getting gear throughout your journey from 60 to 70 and you're in desperate need of some upgrades. Well, first of all, I advise you to start doing some quests that will offer you some pretty decent gear in the process. My series, Gearing for Dungeoneering, yes, shameless plug here, really focuses on that, and I think they can definitely help you improve your gear situation by mostly doing quests. I also have another video up called Gearing Up Your Character Through Quests, where you can see a bunch of quests you can do and see if there's anything in there that you can really use. What you could do is also check the auction house, because the Burning Crusade does know some pretty decent blue items that could be on there for cheap. Though I'm personally not a huge fan of that, because at level 70 there are some hefty things you're going to have to buy, like Flying Mount and saving up for enchants and whatnot. But it's always worth checking out real quick. You can also try your luck and do some mid-60s dungeons that don't require a lot of gear to begin with. Dungeons like Old Hillsbrad Foothills, the Mana Tombs, and Auchenai Crypts are great for crappy geared level 70s and were always super popular on the private servers I played on. They're pretty easy to run, and the gear, while not being level 70, isn't half bad, and on top of that, you get reputation up to honored in these normal dungeons, so that's always a nice bonus. So in a nutshell, if you have crappy gear, try and get gear through quests, check the auction house, and try your luck in mid-60s dungeons. However, what if your gear level is already at a pretty decent level, or your gear was terrible and now through quests in the auction house and some mid-60 dungeons, it's also pretty decent? Well, at this point, I advise you to start doing dungeons in the high 60s to level 70 range. This way you're hitting two birds with one stone. You need to do those dungeons anyway for extra reputation, so you can eventually unlock the heroic mode, and you get a chance to win some pretty nice items. The dungeons I advise you to do are the Steam Vaults, Sethek Halls, Shadow Labs, Shattered Halls, and the dungeons at Tempest Keep. All these dungeons drop some pretty sweet items in normal mode, and some may be a little harder than the others. I mean, I remember Shadow Labs and Alcatraz being a pain in the ass with pug groups, but the reputation and items are definitely worth it. And basically you keep repeating this process until you have decent enough gear for heroics and you start to unlock the keys. Alright, now of course dungeons aren't the only way to gear up, so let me add a few other options to the list, starting with professions. The Burning Crusade knows some really powerful items you can craft for your character. Blacksmithers can craft some sweet weapons, tailors get access to Frozen Shadowweave and Spellfire sets, which by the way are considered to be sometimes even better than tier 4 gear. Leatherworkers get some pretty amazing rogue / feral druid / resto druid / boomy gear, and the list goes on and on. So if you have a profession that allows you to craft gear, try and combine that with farming dungeons in the meantime for maybe some extra epics that will definitely convince other people in the future that you have the gear for either heroic dungeons or raids. Another way to get gear and also some enchants is gaining reputation with the Scryer or Aldor. Now you probably did the City of Light quest when you first entered Shatra, or at least I think you did. If you didn't, there's an NPC called Haggard War Veteran on the northern bridge of Shatra. Talk to him, then talk to Adal, then follow the escort around Shatra. Oh, by the way, his "this won't take long" line, complete and utter nonsense. It's gonna take a while. Anyway, when he's done, you'll be asked to choose one of two factions, the Scryers or the Aldor. So personally, I advise you to go Scryer if you're a caster, or Aldor if you're a melee / hunter. That's because the Scryers offer things like this amazing trinket and caster ring, which are considered to be really good pre-raid items, and the Aldor have this pretty sweet ring, a tanking chest, and an amazing one-handed sword. Of course, they also offer more stuff, and I'll leave both Quartermasters in the description below this video so you can see for yourself what they offer. And that's why I advise you to get reputation with one of these. They offer some really good items that are on par with what drops in heroics, and some of these items are pre-raid best in slot too, so it's definitely worth checking out. To add real quick, both the Aldor and Scryer offer you a few quests to get some honor with them, but the biggest reputation is to be gained from handing in arcane tomes for Scryer and fell armaments for Aldor. A decent way to farm arcane tomes is either killing the Blood Elf mobs in Netherstorm or Shadowmoon Valley, or farm Tempest Keep dungeons like the Mechanar, where they drop those arcane tomes. And a good way to farm fell armaments, in my humble opinion, is doing Shadow Labs. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've seen Shadow Lab runs in LFG chat where they had those damn things on reserve. Of course, there's more ways to farm rep with them, so I'll post a more detailed guide in the description below this video. So yeah, I know, lots of stuff to go about, but that's also kind of neat about the Burning Crusade. It's not super linear, and while gearing up, there's multiple ways of getting gear. So to just recap everything at this stage, do normal dungeons for gear and reputation, check out what gear you can craft depending on your profession, and rack up some Scryer or Aldor rep if you can. Okay, so let's move up a bit. You now have done a fair bit of normal dungeons, you acquired a couple of keys, and your gear is starting to look better. What do we do now? Well, we're off to heroic dungeons of course, but let me add a few things here. So the first thing you have to do before you step into heroic dungeons is grab your Karazhan attunement quest. This quest will require you to do multiple tasks, and a lot of them involve you doing something in a certain heroic dungeon. So if you run one while having this quest in your log, you can basically hit two birds with one stone. Of course, getting into Karazhan is something any person who's focused on PvE wants to do, so it's essential you do this alongside farming heroic dungeons. The attunement quest itself is quite comprehensive and lengthy. Luckily, my good friend Orcbit has made a guide where he explains step by step how to get the key to that raid, so I'll leave that in the description below this video as well. Okay, so the first thing you'll notice as you start running heroic dungeons is that you'll get badges of justice. These badges of justice can be handed in at Shatra, and they offer you some pretty awesome epics that you can get alongside trying to get epics out of heroics. Now what this NPC can give you depends on how far your server has progressed, as with the opening of Zul'aman, several new items were added later to this NPC, and also after they released Sunwell Plateau, even more got added to this NPC. Basically, I advise you to look up this NPC yourself and see what he has to offer. Either way, it's a great way to spend that currency on some really cool epics. Now I just talked about how there's multiple ways to get gear in the Burning Crusade, and I'd like to just add one more to the list. As you're now rolling through heroic dungeons, you'll probably start getting closer and closer to getting revered with certain factions. Now these factions don't just offer keys and some half decent items while leveling, some offer some really good blue items at revered and also some enchants and some amazing epics at level 70. Epics that are sometimes part of your pre-raid best in slot list. So while running heroics for gear drops and your attunement quest, check out the Quartermasters again to see what you can get at revered and exalted, because they are definitely worth your time. A few examples are the Stormcaller Sword from Thrallmar, the Earth Warden from Snarling Expedition, the Gavel of Unearthed Secrets from Lower City, and the Crest of the Shatar from the Shatar, just to name a few. I've already mentioned that the Quartermasters and the gear they offer are in the video description below, so go ahead and take a look at them and see what they can offer you. Alright, and slowly but surely, you'll get your gear out of heroics, you'll finish up your attunement quest, and you got some extras from factions, badges, and possibly some craftable items. So at this stage, you're probably rolling around in full blue gear with some epics here and there. You got your flying mount, and your attunement is done. Well, guess what? Now you're ready to start raiding. And from here on out, it's a little bit more simple. Show up for raids with your guild, make sure you get some consumables, and of course make sure your fancy gear is gemmed and enchanted. And well, I think it's probably good to stop here, because from here on out, things will really start to speak for themselves. I hope I was able to help you guys, and I hope it wasn't too intimidating for you, as I know this is a ton of information. What I advise you to do is to just take things step by step, and possibly even make your own little list, so you can keep track of what you need to do, what you've accomplished so far, and etc, etc. And that's all for now. As always, I want to thank you for watching this video. I'm Hamsterwheel, and have a good one.